Hi, Bill Henshaw here again, Constitutional Kook Headquarters and better than ever. And I'm starting a series. I just did one on the Bill of Particulars to acquaint you with some of the documents, especially in my trial court packet, that get the job done here. Because we go in there and we say it with attitude and with authority. Yet they're the ones that have the sworn duty to establish at least the jurisdiction of the trial court, which they can't do, not to mention the fact they're sworn by this Constitution and the laws enacted in pursuance thereof. And this is across the board, doesn't matter where you are, quote unquote, criminal court, traffic court, family court, IRS, evictions, does not matter, any of it. We can beat the hell out of them, and one of the ways we do it is with my motion to dismiss, which I'm going to show you here. Just some samples from it. And you put this in right after the Bill of Particulars. This is a 1-2 punch. This is 43 pages. It's going to show you the first 3 or 4. And like I say, we say it with attitude and with authority. We cite, as you'll see, all 6 articles of the Constitution. Well, actually, Article 5 isn't in this one, but it could easily have been. All 6 articles. We couldn't care less about the Bill of Rights, the non-existent 14th War Amendment. Inc. This is the real stuff that we need to be doing. And you'll notice in here that page 3 has a lot of case law decisions here. Page 4 also does. And the total of the authorities that we use, yeah, you can see these are all case law decisions here. And the bottom is some other authorities that we use. And there's, I believe, 35 cases in here that are cited. 33 from the U.S. Supreme Court, aka their bosses and our agents. And these bastards have been to law school for 4 to 6 years. And probably the only case they would recognize in here is Ernesto Miranda v. Arizona, 384 U.S. 436, where the court said at page 491 that, where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation that would abrogate them. Personally, I didn't care for the Miranda decision on Hill of Beans, so we'll talk about that on another occasion. But that's the only one they'd probably ever heard of. They'd never studied any of these. I sure as hell didn't when I was in school. I didn't know, but I learned. And I want to teach you. It isn't that hard. And the ignorance is mammoth on the other side. And I can say that because coming out of high school, I was at the head of the class for being ignorant. I had no clue. And it's so damn stupid. What did I do? I volunteered into the Vietnam War, quote unquote, at the height of the Tet Offensive. And thank God for my dearly beloved mom. She put a curse on the Marine Corps and said, "You're not going to get me." And they didn't. I had the shortest tour of duty in the history of the Marines, 3 hours. In the cell phone era, probably would have been closer to 45 minutes because I get in there to Fort Holabird and the sergeant looks up and says, "If you lost your glasses, how would you know who to shoot?" I didn't know the right answer like I would now. I would have fired right back if I knew it. I would have said, "Fine, give me an M16, point me back down to Washington, D.C., 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'll take care of the problem." And that's the right answer then. It is now. The Vietnam War never existed. It was a UN peacekeeping effort. And just a brief aside here, we were set up for that 20 years in advance by the trilateralists, the one world government. This is how these bastards work. And you got the Japanese on September 2nd, 1945, surrendering on the battleship Missouri, signing the peace treaty, while we're holding a fire sale over there because now we don't have to do a land invasion. And so we have a lot of stuff there. It's better to make some money and leave it there and be done with it. And you should be not surprised by who got most of it, and you've heard of them. Ho, 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 chi minh. These bastards were setting up the Vietnam War with the French in the 1950s, and our entry 10 years later. That's how they work. One world BS government. And that's what happened. And that, by the way, accounts for what happened in Dealey Plaza with John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated for sure, but not by quote unquote Lee Harvey Oswald, a video for another day. because he had just issued recently an executive order getting us out of Vietnam. The first thing that landslide Lyndon Johnson does, and that was a Friday, by the way, Monday morning, first official day in office, he signs an executive order reversing it and putting us back into Vietnam, which we were for the next 12 years. And who knows how many thousands of American lives lost in a situation that should never have happened. And yeah, I was obliquely aware at the time, of a lot of opposition to the Vietnam War, but I was so ignorant in those days, I didn't get it. I do now, and I'm going to teach you how to do that, especially with that issue, but a lot of others that you're going to come across and be familiar with. And you don't have to be near as good as I am. The ignorance on the other side, is so bad. But the good news is you put documents in that are in my trial court packet. Send me an email. You win at court. You win in court at gmail.com. I'll send you information on that. And it's going to be clear that you've met up with someone who knows what the hell he's doing here. And indeed, one of the things you get, because I'm going to have your back, so you get a complimentary Zoom appearance at a contested hearing, which you're never going to see because they can't allow that to happen on the record. It would convict them of treason to the Constitution. I mean, that's how powerful we are. We just don't know it. And it's the last thing they want you to know. They want you to think that the government's, in it for your good. They're going to do everything to help you and all this BS. And it's exactly the opposite. Everything they do favors the New York bankers, the one worlders, the trilateralists. I mean, God, it just doesn't stop. So that said, you go on with, what I showed you right here. And I do long documents. This one, 43 pages. My brief on admission of new states is 83 pages with 75 case citations. And it doesn't leave anything to the imagination. There are no good states. That's Pandora's box and the crown jewel of all the unopposed constitutional issues I advocate. And you will be advocating. And this is how you get rid of them in a hurry, because they can't answer it. And we end up, in effect, either setting an unopposed record in the trial court, or if the documents aren't filed, and that's happening a lot more in this day and age. When I first started about in the mid 80s, it was rarely a problem. Now it is, especially with all this COVID BS going on. But that said, if you can't get documents filed, and you're going to get a lot of support for this, this is why we set the unopposed record or constructively set it. Now we file a love letter with all the perps, aka petition for redress of grievance, and tell them in no uncertain terms, get your checkbooks out. You can't have this go to trial, and you can't have me come in there and testify as an expert witness, and you can't go up against a record that's going to defeat your usually reliable motion to dismiss for the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. You use it all the time. I think it's 12 FRCP, whatever it is, but they get, close to 98% of these civil rights cases, which is not what we do, dismissed on the first motion, never to be heard of again. Probably close to 100% for pro se litigants. We are not there pro se. We don't need their permission to be there, acting as our own attorney. We're there in propria persona. We own the place. We created the whole government to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. What don't they understand about that? And why don't they teach it in schools? I would love to have known that 50 odd years ago. I didn't, like I say, better late than never. But I learned, and now I'm here to teach you how to do the same thing. And you can get some really good results too, and we can start making changes in the way this system does business that not only benefits us, it benefits your children and our posterity. That's what they can't beat. If we ever get in front of a jury, we're not there for the money, which is going to be a lot of it. But we want to make changes and get back to the government we had that was much more simple, much more locally oriented, far less expensive, far more efficient, and much easier to control. That's a hell of a trifecta. Now, it wasn't perfect. There's changes that we can make if we do it in concordance with the Constitution. And that's why I'm so fundamentally against, Asians and Africans and LGBTQ types claiming they have rights. They don't. It comes from the 14th Amendment, which not only doesn't exist, it never did. And to invoke that is to, in effect, invoke the war power of Congress and the president acting as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That's treason to the Constitution. If you have to invoke rights that way, you knew or should have known that that's not how it's done. And that sort of thing, even if you had citizenship, which you don't, by the way, all that 14th Amendment was corporate citizenship, IBM, Chase Bank, you name it. That's all it was, subordinate body politic. You don't have anything anyway. It looked great on the surface, like so much of what government does, but some exploration beneath that, and I've done a hell of a lot over the course of 5 decades here. You find out the truth and what really went on, and it's not nearly as good as it looks. Exactly like what's going on today with all this crap they're doing. So you have ways to get there and the power to do it. And that's what we have to start doing. All of us working together here. And you get these documents like you've seen this motion to dismiss again. It's a hell of a, I mean, that's the coup de grace right there. But you add to that my conditional acceptance of counsel, objection to entry of plea, brief on the 14th Amendment. They have nowhere to go. And there isn't going to be a trial. They'd be absolutely nuts to do that. So what happens is you either get a dismissal, and I just had one last week of January, but they figured out that they couldn't go to a trial by jury, or they make a sweetheart plea deal, which you'll be free to accept. And by the way, when you get my materials, you get a lot of backup from me. I have your backs. Among other things, you get free complimentary phone consultations, and even that complimentary Zoom appearance I mentioned at a contested hearing. So you'll have some work to do. Study those 5 basic documents that you get. And like I say, you won't get it right away. I didn't either. But that's my job, is to make it easier. And I want feedback from those of you who get my materials and study them, so I can make them even easier, to reach out and let you grab hold of and see the power that we have. Once you experience it like I did in that South Carolina felony case, where I shut the bastards up in the first 30 seconds of the first hearing that I had after being hauled across the country for 2 months. Give me a break here. Just shut them up. That's it. That's $1 million video if I had it. And they claim conveniently not to have made it this in supposedly a court of record. You tell me. But with a little work and time and effort on your part, you can do this and teach your kids and your posterity. That's the important part here. I don't have any, by the way. I'm the last of the line. And for various reasons, I figured early on that I wasn't going to do it. But when I got started doing this in 1983, I realized the work I'm doing here is more important. And if the family can't be first, why do I want to have one? So for better or worse, I haven't. It's, I've had a few days, I've regretted it, but not that much, because the work is so much important. And that's what's going to live on. If I can leave a legacy like this, even if I don't get across the Red Sea, so other people can do it and make changes. I've done the job I was put here to do. You can learn how to do it too. Send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. Remember also to like the videos, subscribe, tell your friends, get the word out. Once you start cutting at all this BS divide and conquer they've been doing for at least 150 years, and Asians, Americans, and Africans work together, the same issues and the right courts. This is how we get the bastards off our backs. Thank you.